So, thanks to OG whistleblowers when it comes to narcissistic personality disorder, NPD terms like gaslighting have entered the public sphere, and boy, are people misusing this word. In this video, we're going to discuss NPD jargon, gaslighting, blame shifting, and projecting. But before we do that, I just want to thank you for being here and ask you to take this time right now to like the video because it does so much for me as a content creator. All right, now that you've liked my video, gaslighting is most definitely a strategy used by people who crave control, whether they are parents, lovers, spouses, friends, or employers. Discussions need to be had about gaslighting, but these discussions should be in conversation with blame shifting as well. Blame shifting in some ways more subtle than gaslighting and way harder to see. The two belong on a Venn diagram together so that similarities and differences can be obviously ascertained. Let's compare and contrast the two, shall we? Gaslighting and blame shifting. Here we go. So both tactics, are verbally abusive and rely on an imbalance of power between the abuser and the intended target. In most cases, the powerless target loves or cares deeply for the abuser and is invested in this abuser. The abuser doing the gaslighting and blame shifting is more invested in feeling dominant and superior over their target than they are actually emotionally invested in their target. It means more to them to exert power and control over their target than to seek peace with their target. What is gaslighting? Gaslighting takes its name from a play that became a movie in 1944. The movie, called Gaslight, starred Charles Boyer and Ingrid Bergman. In it, Boyer's character manipulates Bergman's character and distracts her from his criminality by trying to convince her that she is going insane. Not to get too deep into the movie, but basically, the lights in their home are running on gas. It's a huge, beautiful home. Oh my goodness, it's just beautiful. He progressively dims these gaslights ever so often until she asks, "Is it just me or is it getting darker in here?" His response, "You're losing it. You sound crazy. You need a doctor. These lights are the same as they've always been." Even though he is manually dimming their gas-operated lights. Hence the term gaslight. This is what gaslighters do. They make the target believe that their grip on reality is shaky at best and non-existent at worst. Gaslighting is insisting that something that actually happened didn't. That's it. Gaslighting dismisses a claim made by the target as simply imagined or telling the person flat out that she or he is losing touch with reality or crazy. You're just crazy. I had a person accuse me of stalking their partner. You know, YouTube couples like to save face. I was ridiculed and humiliated as a stalker until I logged into my T-Mobile account on a live stream for all to see and showed my every phone call and text message I was getting from this person's boyfriend's phone number. It wasn't hard for people who knew their phone numbers to spot them in my phone, day in and day out, all hours of the night, calling and texting. This exonerated me. However, this resulted in narcissistic injury to the female narc who propagated the smear campaign. This led to years worth of cyberbullying that really hasn't stopped. Because narcissists are obsessive. It's what they do. But for now, her flying monkeys, they try to handle me on her behalf, And I've distanced myself from all of them. I've blocked and cut off all of them. You get no energy from me. Not anymore. Even after I presented solid proof to the sector they belong to, however, they chose gaslighting. They chose gaslighting in denial by saying I fabricated those T-Mobile receipts. How could I log into... Listen, if I could do that kind of magic, I'd be a hacker. I would not be a YouTube content creator. But I digress. While it takes some concerted effort to gaslight another adult, gaslighting a child as well as certain neurodivergent people is remarkably easy because of the enormous power and authority disparity that exists by definition between the two. For example, in a parent-child relationship, what child can stand up to the words, "You're imagining it because it never happened," when uttered by his mother or father, each of whom is the ruler of the very small universe in which that child lives? What child can stand up to that? We all thought adults knew everything and were all powerful. We thought they were right all the time as small children. I've seen grown adult women realize in therapy that they were assaulted as children in the worst way by adults who could have impregnated them after years of believing it was just a reoccurring nightmare because their parents told them it never happened. It was just a dream. Of course, favoring the abuser over the victim, because what in God's name are you doing? Anyhow, this woman grew up thinking she was crazy until her memory was unlocked in a therapy session. And, her people had to confess that they'd been gaslighting her all her life. Can you imagine the level of horror and trust issues in that woman? Now apply that same power dynamic to every relationship where pecking order exists. Husband, wife, older and younger sibling, teacher and student, principal and teacher. Sometimes even among co-equals where where the power dynamic is skewed in favor of the abuser, who has more influence and authority than the target, like content creator versus subscriber or channel moderator, right? Because so much of this is indeed translating to social media. It's not just our personal lives anymore. Maybe every girl in, the high school group is a senior, but the prettiest or most popular or most fashion-forward girl can exert a just or unjust power dynamic among the group based on her scale of narcissism, wherever she falls on that, continuum. It can be a co-equal. It doesn't always have to be someone given authority. Like gaslighting, blame shifting also exploits whatever disparity in power exists in the relationship. This is why some men prefer younger women. It's not just about youth and fertility, like some would gaslight you into thinking. It's about power and control. Between adults of similar age and experience, blame shifting is more successful than gaslighting. The behavior is, this kind of behavior is always about power. The sad truth is that the victim tends to be the one who loves, needs, and depends on his or her abuser in ways that significantly differ from the motivations of the person shifting the blame. So this is how blame shifting works. We've just gone over gaslighting. Now let's talk a little bit about blame shifting. Similar, but not the same. The abuser knows your weaknesses and tendencies. Among them might be your steadfast avoidance of conflict or your tendency to play peacemaker. I literally was nicknamed peacemaker in high school. Oh my God. Your tendency to backtrack on your positions, your desire to please, and your insecurities and doubts about your thoughts and feelings. They don't get over on other bad guys as bullies. They just have it out as filthy co-equals. But when you're the good guy, this kind of bullying ensues because you've not got that kind of energy to give. They play on your goodness, exploiting it as a weakness. Those that get caught up in this kind of web typically grew up in households where their emotional needs weren't met. They were unloved, unsupported, or even picked on. Maybe not by everyone. Maybe just, a parent or an elder sibling, an elder cousin, babysitter, etc., somebody. This is also true of the abuser, but he or she learned to cope differently. These are abuse victims who learn to cope by becoming the abuser. So let's say you complained about the abuser's behavior, right? Maybe they hit you. Maybe they cursed you or cursed at you, humiliated you in front of friends, and the argument escalated until finally the abuser says, I wouldn't have acted that way if you weren't always like this. Or they might say, if you didn't always start with me when I'm dog tired from work, I wouldn't lose my temper. Or they could say, if you weren't always focused on your needs, we wouldn't be fighting. And that last one is a doozy, because that's how we get, for example, the wives that neglect themselves to their own detriment only for their spouses to use their self-neglect as justification for serial cheating. Well, you weren't keeping up with yourself anymore. Yeah, because she was keeping up with you. Listen, this works on you and I because your goal, or maybe used to work on, I don't know where you are, your NPD knowledge and development, but this works on individuals because your goal is to work it out, right? When you get into these fights, disagreements with people that you care about, it works on you because your goal is to work it out, while theirs is not. Their aim is to dominate. That's it. So you hear these complaints and feel guilty as they lob the responsibility of a relational breakdown entirely upon you, while they get away without any accountability nor responsibility for the matter at all. Think of every assault victim. Well, what were you wearing? Well, what were you doing there? Well, if you hadn't been out so late at night, this never would have happened. So it's your fault, and you need to take accountability for ape, actual assault, and all manner of horrific things, right? A few years ago, actually, I was a victim of revenge porn. Someone got into the email and phone of a person I had sent a picture to and posted it onto Instagram. The flying monkeys would come in. Well, you need to take some accountability because had you not sent the photo, you wouldn't be in this mess. In other words, he wouldn't have aped you had you not worn that dress. Same thing, slippery slope. For whatever it's worth, the person that I sent the photo to never exposed those photos ever at any point in time. And that's something that is typically understood between people who exchange photos. Obviously it's tender information. You don't just put it out there. It was actually someone who got into that person's personals. Now, my response to this was, and I felt like I had to respond because this was happening online with very many content creators, and it was a huge scandal in a certain sector of which I am no longer a part. My response was this: for the people who are blaming me, if it was my fault, then I'd be guilty of the felony as well. Where are the charges that can be pressed on me for revenge corn? I probably shouldn't have said it with a P the first time. Hopefully the algorithm doesn't pick that up. Hey, algorithm girl. Hey, girl. How you doing, girl? Those kind of charges don't exist for me because I'm not at fault, right? And there are cultures, I certainly come from one where they have a culture of victim shaming and blaming, and you really have to just kind of stand your ground, because some people, they don't wake up out of that until somebody stands their ground and they realize, oh, you made a good point. I mean, you can't throw me in jail for what happened to me because I have no guilt. I have no guilt in the matter. Anyhow, here's hoping the SHIELD Act is passed this year. Right now, it's just a bill on Capitol Hill. Shout out to Schoolhouse Rocks. The SHIELD Act is it makes it so that federal prosecution can occur when revenge porn is committed across state lines. Anyhow, early in my relationship with a man who turned out to be a textbook NPD case, I noticed that he had an odd way of deflecting the conversation when I discovered he hadn't been entirely truthful about something I'd asked him about. He would respond with something like, well, if you had asked me the right question, I would have given you the answer. I probably should have did that in his accent. So now it's my fault, right? Now it's my fault. This person has misled me because, they lied by omission. And, behold, this is blame shifting. All of this is blame shifting. So, for example, where were you becomes, their answer is at the club. Who were you with is answered with the owner of the club. When did you get home? He goes 3 a.m., right? His answers. But what really happened was, and this is, well, if you would have asked the right question, you would have got the right answer. What really happened was this. The narc was working as a bouncer and security guard at a club where he took girls to the bathroom and finished them. You read in between the lines. I am not getting this video demonetized trying to tell a story about a trifling individual who was able to act in such a publicly disgusting way because he was actually friends with the club owner. And so, sure, he pulled into the parking lot of his home at 3 a.m., but in reality stayed in that parking lot for another 3 hours with the same girl he took to the bathroom at the club, and didn't enter into his apartment home until after 6 a.m. And I know because I was there trying to get in and I couldn't. Right? I was there for breakfast before just before sunrise. So I'm like, the clock, the time ain't adding up. What's going on? Explain yourself. I smell your secrets. Anyhow, all of this is, well, if you would have asked the right question, you would have got the right answer. And I also want to say, in my case, my narc spoke like 6 languages, so he could gaslight me willy-nilly with these faux language barriers that did not exist. Language barriers and misunderstandings and blah, blah, blah. I didn't get it because in my language and in this, it translates as that. And I had to garble like just nonsense, hogwash. And this is why I say narcissists all over the world have read from the same playbook. His flag can be red, white, and blue. It could be red, green, and yellow. I'm telling you, all over the world, they are the same individual. I mean, if you are a non-believing, agnostic, atheist, whatever it is, by the time you've dealt with the narcissist, you're just like, I don't know what's out there, but something is. You become a spiritual person after dealing with a narcissist. So why does the narcissist blame shift? The obvious answer is that it permits them to dodge responsibility for their words and actions. You become the fall guy for their every misdeed. They'll never be guilty or responsible for anything they've done so long as they can shift the blame onto you. Oh, shifty individuals. What's more convenient than having a ready-made scapegoat? What's more convenient than that? I mean, being right all the time, especially for the narc, it's this convenient confirmation for the narcissist, reinforcing how strong and superior they are. Remember in previous videos, we talked about their need, more than Pavlov's pyramid hierarchy of human needs, is a need to feel superior, right? So always being able to blame you reinforces how superior they are. You have sin and they don't. You have fault and they don't. It keeps them deaf to that brutal ego of theirs that screams from their internal mountaintops that they are no good. I'm adding projection here to our list of jargon for this video. So we have gaslighting, blame shifting, and projection, only because projection fits within the subcategory of blame shifting and gaslighting. And, it's need to know NPD jargon. So when you're facing these people, you know what to say, you know what to call it, you know what it is, and you're not stumbling over your words, right? You're armed with that knowledge. Projecting is just what it sounds like, y'all. If you have ever had a teacher in elementary school with a projector screen that put the movie or the lesson on the board for all the students to see, then you can deduce exactly what projection is. Instead of your teacher projecting a lesson onto the whiteboard or chalkboard, it's your narc projecting their feelings, actions, emotions, and guilt onto you. It's never them. It's always you. Sorry, I had to edit my notes here. They can be red in the face, hollering at the top of their lungs. But somehow, according to them, it's your anger and your temper causing problems. See that? Well, once upon a time, not so long ago, and this is just an example, Hey, this is just an example. I'm full of them because I mean, people said don't bring this word into 2022, and I completely understand how empath has been driven into the ground, but I'm an extreme empath, and I've really had to learn to deal with that because I've gotten myself into a lot of trouble. And those of you who know what an empath is, you know that they are prone to being abused. And I'm also neurodivergent. I'm also self-assessed as autistic, recently diagnosed with ADHD, and neurodivergent people also are more prone to having people abuse and exploit them. People with disabilities in general are more prone to poor treatment, more often than not. More often than the normies and neurotypical. So unfortunately, I have a lot of these stories, but don't let that get you down, because I've definitely been in therapy and done the work. And the last relationship I had, my partner passed away, but the last relationship I had, I mean, just the love of my life, just the most beautiful, reciprocal, mutually beneficial, just beauty. Okay. And that happened because I did the work. I found what it was in me that kept attracting the same person in a different body. And I lived to see what healing is like on the other side. And I'm just so grateful for that. And I wish that upon you. I wish that for whoever has gone through these kinds of things, because dealing with a person with NPD can really get you to take yourself out. But, you know, here's to knowledge to help you so that if you do encounter these things, you don't count yourself out. So again, here's a story. Once upon a time, not long ago. Type in the comment section if you know that song by Mariah Len from Lemon Hip Hop. But anyhow, once upon a time, not long ago, I had a streetwalker who had been arrested for soliciting her services on the Las Vegas Strip call me an HOE. Bruh. This was over a picture I'd posted, right? And I don't mean she called me that as an insult, because some people will just say it to you as an insult. I mean, she promoted this as my occupation for her social media audience, okay? That's what she did. And listen, and I have to say that I have to stop laughing at this point, because I want to get a point across. I don't have a record or even a mugshot. And alhamdulillah, I don't have that kind of life. I grew up incredibly religious and conservative, spending most of my life abstinent due to a fear of God, which was incredibly ingrained in me, into my black and white extremist kind of autistic understanding of right and wrong. Like, so listen, I had mountainous levels of guilt readily available for narcs to exploit. But imagine the nerve. Right. And I have to say, and this is why I stopped laughing, because I wanted to be clear. I'm not against, quote, ladies of the night. I'm not against X work with an S. I mean, if that's your position, that's fine. And I respect that, because I used to be as well. Right. I used to be adamantly against X work with an X, with an S. But I'm not willing to clown these kind of people. You're just not going to degrade me as being one when you actually are. You're not about to use that as an insult against me and my private parts and my lifestyle when that's really you. That's the point I'm trying to make here. So this is no shame to the people who are in that line of work. This is just specifically the projecting narcissist, okay? So she called me exactly what she was, knowing full well that that's her and not me. I don't have to tell her about a mugshot she posed for. She knows because she was there, right? She knows because she was there. But they take everything they've done and they put it onto you. I mean, these people are outside of their minds. But she did this for thousands of people. And I was like, you know what? I mean, and here's the deal. The way that I look, I'm very tall, I'm very curvy, I'm very busty. So you could say I appear like a bimbo for all intents and purposes. I mean, even if I wear big clothing which I do oftentimes outside of the house, just because with autism or with symptoms of autism, you don't want everything touching your skin. So, on social media, I tend to post, and things I like to wear, which is relatively immodest. But when I leave the house, no matter what I do, I'm modest, because I'm like, ew, I don't want the seat belt. I don't want the seat. I don't want this restaurant chair touching my skin, because I don't know who was here. Like, I have this thing about being clean, So anyhow, I tend to wear the things that I like to wear at home. And if I look nice enough, I'll take a picture. It is what it is. Anyhow, so this woman was projecting onto me. Craig Malkin called it playing emotional hot potato. And good googa mooga, this is right on the money. That's right, bullseye, right on the money. They just project their sins right onto you. Whatever they don't like about themselves, whatever infirmity they have, they just pin it to you. Like whenever it's too hot to hold, it's yours. Whenever something they do wrong is too hot to hold, it's yours. This same woman went on a campaign about how conservative she was, only to get, remember I talked about that BBL and buying Brazilian bundles and a Brazilian booty to look like me, right? I told you that basically, how do I say this? So she went on this campaign about how conservative she was, only to flaunt herself, buying dresses like mine, posing like me, using it was eerie. Right? So I'm conservative. And then finally, when you buy enough hair and body to show off, this is what you do. Right? Anyhow, so she tried until the distribution of the weight failed her, and now she's somewhere sat in a seat somewhere. But anyhow, in his book, Rethinking Narcissism, Craig Malkin calls this projection playing emotional hot potato. And I love that he said that, because it helps us to reimagine projection as something visual. He helps us to be able to see what's happening with projection. So if you've ever played hot potato in kindergarten or in elementary school, you just see people tossing this beanbag, tossing this ball. Or if your teacher was really cool like Miss Frizzle, you tossed an actual microwaved hot potato to really get the point, literally. The narcissist ascribes what he or she is feeling to their target. They'll tell you you're ugly when they feel ugly. They'll call you fat when they feel fat. They'll call you stupid when they can't figure things out. They will call you, she's ugly without her filters, because they feel like they are without their filters. Just whatever it is they're feeling internally, now it's yours. If you take it. And you don't have to take it. Unfortunately, people with reasonably sound and soft hearts, they're apt to believe the narcissist, because most people can't imagine that someone would be so dishonest to such a degree just for power and control. We think to ourselves, there must be some reason why this person is saying all of this to me. We think to ourselves that we should consider it as constructive criticism, but you shouldn't. The narc is just projecting, and you were never who they said you were. It was them the whole time. By getting you to believe it, though, they exchange their internal pain for what you used to have of internal peace. It's the cruelest form of exchange from you to them. These are energy vampires, people parasites, whatever you want to call them. They make that exchange, and somehow that exchange is real. It's real when you participate. These are empty vessels. They are empty inside until they draw from you whatever feeling or identity they need to sit with themselves, to be able to even stand themselves. So they find a good person like you. They find a well-accomplished person like you. They find a beautiful person like you. They find a beloved person like you. And they just take the mick out of you. And they do this all their lives. They never stop until whatever they use for manipulation is no longer in their hands anymore. And then they become what is referred to as a collapsed narcissist. And I will put that on my list of NPD jargon terms you need to know. So like, share, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comment section below. Uppity and I'm out.